I'm delighted to say that once again this morning, the dog listener Tony Knight joins us. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Ian.
I thought it might be nice to talk about older dogs today, not for any personal reasons, but I've got a geriatric in my home. Sometimes they're called cranky old dogs. Can their behaviour change as they get older?
Absolutely. There's a few reasons for that. Dogs as they get older, from pups onwards, they will ask questions at various times in their life because they reach, a certain amount of maturity. And as they grow up, they can take on different roles. But when they start to get older, unfortunately, physically, they may start to deteriorate. And as a result, they can start to feel vulnerable. And when they feel vulnerable, they can start to ask questions just to be reassured more often that everything's okay and they can trust their owners to make the decisions. And the other thing that can happen is if you've got an older dog with younger dogs, the younger dogs unfortunately can start to pick on the older dog because it sounds bad, but what the younger dogs are actually saying is, what are you still doing here? You're not really a useful member of the pack anymore. So one of the things we say to owners who have old dogs that are being picked on by the younger dogs is, if they're unsupervised, keep them apart so you don't want to get in any bother. But also, if the young dogs do start picking on the older dog, then these younger dogs get a time out. They get basically excluded from the pack in another room or something to show the dogs, if you pick on this senior citizen, you're going to get something you don't like. And it's just about understanding the natural instinct for them to question their position in the pack, but always our response is the most consistent thing. We always give them the same advice, the same information to the dogs so they can feel reassured that everything's okay, even if they're not feeling 100% like they used to.
So if you've just got that one older dog, do you need to treat it any differently or just treat it the way you always have?
I always say, well, the fact is, people say to me, when should you start doing the Amish bonding process with the dog? When should you start dog listening with the dog? And I say, well, when did it start being a dog? So, from a puppy, that's when they start to ask questions. And as they go through their life, they will ask questions. I've got two dogs who are getting on a bit as well, Ian. I've got Kez is 12 and Prue is 10. And Kez recently started to struggle a bit getting into the car, so I have to lift him into the car now. But apart from that, mentally he's active, but he is starting to get a little bit clingy just because he's thinking, I'm not as fit as I used to be, so can I rely on you to look after me? So the main thing for me to do is to be consistent in my messages to show him, yes, you can still trust me. Because if the dog thinks that it can't, that it's the one that's making the decisions, it may start to panic. And that's why some people have, situations where their dogs become older and then behaviour starts to come in that they didn't do before, which they don't really like, although, they're concerned as to why it happens. And it's purely because the dog is feeling vulnerable and needs some reassurance. But we can give the dog that reassurance by giving it the right messages in a way that it understands. And that's what dog listening is all about.
What about old dogs and young children? You often hear people say, to a kid, be careful because he's an old dog.
Yeah. Well, personally, we've spoken about this before. I think any dog and children should learn the right way to interact with dogs. I always say that, the first thing you should teach people, no matter how old they are, is don't go up to a dog. Call a dog to you if you want to fuss it, because, 96% plus of people that get bitten by dogs get bitten because they go up to them and the dog is saying, leave me alone. Now, you add that to a dog that feels vulnerable already and could be fast asleep and suddenly get startled, then maybe it might react in a way we don't like. But if we get people to realise if you want to fuss a dog, call the dog to you, then the dog is not going to feel its space is invaded. It's coming to you by choice. And, with Kez, when I call him and he looks at me and he struggles to get up a bit, I think, I'll leave him a bit because it's not fair on him, bless him.
I know it's a pretty delicate subject, Tony, but when Kez gets to the stage where you make the judgment, perhaps, that the quality of life is not there,
yeah,
how hard is that decision to make? I would imagine for anyone it would be dreadful.
This is what sucks about being a dog owner. Dogs don't live long enough.
No.
We love them to bits. Taj is what? He's 14, so you've got a senior citizen there. You've got a distinguished gentleman in the house, and that's the thing which people have asked me. In my capacity as a dog listener, do you think I should put my dog to sleep? Now that's not my call. It really is. I can't do that because if somebody does it and then regrets it, they're going to think that you made me do it.
Yeah.
Basically, quality of life is is the dog in pain? If the dog's not in pain and is a bit doddery, then that's fine. If you think there's too much and he's suffering, then of course, that's the choice that we make. And it sucks, but the responsible thing for an owner to do is say, is my dog okay, or is it suffering? And if the dog's okay, then great, we can carry on. We might just not go for walks anymore because it's a bit too much hard work for you. And remember, the good thing about, understanding the nature of the dog is you don't have to take your dog for a walk every day. And if they've got a bit of arthritis, they're gonna thank you for that because they're not going to be in pain.
And the $64,000 question, can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Absolutely. It's an interesting thing we say that, isn't it? I mean, the thing that I like to say is, if I ever find myself in, say, Paris, France, and I'm lost and I want to find the Gare du Nord, the North Station, and I see a 95-year-old Frenchman, I'm not going to walk up to him and go, "Oi, mush, where's the North Station?" Because he's not going to understand a word I say. But if I say, "S'il vous plaît, monsieur, c'est où la Gare du Nord?" he's going to help me out, because the great thing about dog listening is regardless of the age of the dog, if you communicate in a way that makes sense to them, you get some progress. And that's why people can take on old rescue dogs and still give that dog a great life for quite a few years as well. You'd be surprised how long they live. Are you planning a trip down under sometime soon? I am. I'm going to be in Perth in September, so I will be more than happy to come in the studio and answer the listeners' questions, and basically, you'll show me the sites as well, I trust. That will be fantastic. We'll look forward to it. Thank you very much, Tony. It's a pleasure as always. See you soon. Tony Knight, the dog listener, here on 720 ABC Perth.